Hi, I'm Aliyah Aziz and welcome to A News. Here are the headlines. At least 32 people have been killed in a missile strike on the Ukrainian city of Sumy. White House labels initial round of talks with Iran on its nuclear program as constructive. Relations between Algeria and France are strained again after French prosecutors convicted one of the Algerian consular officials. A deadly missile strike has hit the northern Ukrainian city of Sumy, causing significant casualties and destruction. Ukraine is blaming Russia and calling for stronger international pressure as peace efforts continue behind the scenes.
At least 32 people were killed and more than 80 wounded in a Russian ballistic missile strike on the northern Ukrainian city of Sumy, according to Ukraine's Interior Minister, Ihor Klimenko. The missile struck a busy area in the city centre. Victims were on the street, inside vehicles, on public transport, and in nearby buildings when the missiles hit. Footage released by Sumy's regional military administration showed scenes of chaos, bodies of the dead and wounded lying in the streets, while cars burned in the aftermath of the explosions. Ukraine's emergency services also shared video of crews battling fires at the strike site. Ukraine's intelligence service said the missiles were Iskander-M ballistic rockets launched from Russia's Voronezh and Kursk regions. Authorities reported that at least 20 buildings were damaged, including 4 educational institutions, 5 apartment blocks, cafes, shops, cars, and trams. President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the strike, calling it one of the deadliest attacks on Ukraine this year, and urged the US and European nations to respond firmly. He described the strike as an act of terrorism and called for a tough international reaction against Moscow. Earlier, speaking to reporters on Air Force One, US President Donald Trump said peace talks are still continuing.
I think Ukraine, Russia might be going okay, and you're going to be finding out pretty soon. You know, there's a point at which you just have to either put up or shut up, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's going fine.
So far, Russian officials have not commented on the incident.
The White House released a statement on Saturday praising the initial round of talks with Iran on its nuclear program as being very positive and constructive. President Donald Trump sent special U.S. envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, to Oman to begin negotiations with an Iranian delegation in the hopes of easing tensions between the two countries. Our correspondent Ubi Shahbandar has more.
Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, met face-to-face with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in the Arabian Gulf state of Oman on Saturday to kick off negotiations that Washington hopes will once and for all prevent Iran from ever developing a nuclear weapon in the future. Per a readout from the White House, Witkoff conveyed to the Iranians President Donald Trump's commitment to, quote, dialogue and diplomacy in order to avoid a potential direct clash with Iran. In March, President Trump sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, declaring the president's readiness to engage in direct talks in order to reach a deal on Iran's nuclear program. Trump has publicly warned that if a deal is not reached, Iran faces the prospects of military strikes against sensitive nuclear sites like the ones in Natanz and Fordow. The White House on Saturday said that while the issues under discussions are very complicated, Special Envoy Witkoff's direct communication with the Iranians was a step forward in achieving a mutually beneficial outcome. Both sides agreed to meet again next Saturday. On Friday, President Trump told reporters, quote, I want Iran to be wonderful, great, happy country, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. Prior to the talks in Oman, the Trump administration imposed additional sanctions on Iran's oil trading networks, including sanctions on a China-based crude oil storage terminal. China is Iran's biggest buyer of oil, American sanctions have severely damaged Iran's economy following President Trump's February executive order to put maximum pressure on Iran due to the administration's concerns that Iran continues to pursue underground nuclear weaponization activities. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington, D.C.
Delegations from Iran and the United States are set to meet again next week, following what's being described as constructive nuclear talks, including the first direct contact between a Trump administration official and an Iranian counterpart. According to Iran's state news agency, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed that the next round of talks would take place in Oman on April 19th. He said Saturday's discussions got very close to establishing a framework for negotiations, with the two nations aiming to reach an agreement as quickly as possible. The Trump administration has exempted smartphones and key tech devices from tariffs, easing concerns from U.S. tech companies about rising prices. The U.S. president also said that he would provide an update on his administration's approach to semiconductor tariffs on Monday.
The Trump administration has lifted tariffs on smartphones, computers, and other tech goods. This includes a 125% tariff on Chinese imports. The exemption also covers electronic devices like semiconductors, solar cells, and memory cards. The decision follows fears from U.S. tech companies about skyrocketing gadget prices. Many devices, including iPhones, are made in China. Apple alone accounted for more than half of U.S. smartphone sales last year. Meanwhile, President Trump stated that he will provide an update on his administration's approach to semiconductor tariffs.
I'll give you that answer on Monday. We'll be very specific on Monday. But we're taking in a lot of money. As a country, we're taking in a lot of money.
Reports show that about 80% of iPhones for the US market are made in China. Only 20% are produced in India. Apple and other smartphone makers such as Samsung, Xiaomi and Huawei have been diversifying supply chains, turning to India and Vietnam as production hubs.
American consumer confidence took a significant hit on April, reaching levels not seen in decades. According to new data from the University of Michigan, inflation fears and intensifying trade tensions are fueling, raising concerns about the broader health of the U.S. economy.
Consumer sentiment in the United States fell sharply in April, with the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index dropping to 50.8, down from 57 in March. That's far below economists' expectations, who had forecast a more modest decline to 54.5. The survey found that the downturn in confidence was widespread, cutting across all demographics including age, income, education levels, regions, and political affiliations. The latest data was gathered through interviews conducted between March 25th and April 8th. Meanwhile, inflation expectations among consumers have surged. The 12-month inflation outlook rose to 6.7% in April, the highest level since 1981. That's a sharp jump from 5% the previous month. Over a 5-year horizon, inflation is now expected to average 4.4% from 4.1% in March. This economic anxiety is unfolding against the backdrop of escalating trade tensions. On Wednesday, President Donald Trump intensified the trade war with China, raising tariffs on Chinese goods to 125%. In a swift response, Beijing implemented an identical 125% tariff on American exports. Although the administration has suspended some targeted tariffs for a 90-day window, a broad 10% duty on most imports remains in effect. Additionally, a 25% tariff still applies to motor vehicles, steel, and aluminum. These aggressive trade measures have sparked widespread concern that the U.S. economy may be heading into a period of high inflation and sluggish growth, or potentially a recession.
Tensions are rising again between Algeria and France after a consular official was arrested in Paris over the kidnapping of an Algerian influencer. Algiers has strongly protested the move, calling it politically motivated and a threat to recently renewed efforts to repair ties.
Algeria has strongly protested after French prosecutors placed one of its consular officials in pre-trial detention. He is suspected of being involved in the April 2024 kidnapping of an Algerian influencer in a suburb of Paris. The case has caused a new rift between France and Algeria, just as both sides were trying to improve relations. On Friday, French authorities charged 3 men, including the Algerian consular officer, over the kidnapping of Amir Boukhouz, known online as Amir DZ. Boukhouz is a TikTok influencer with over 1 million followers and a known critic of the Algerian government. He has lived in France since 2016 and was granted political asylum last year. His lawyer said Boukhouz was kidnapped in April, but released the next day. French prosecutors say the suspects are being investigated for kidnapping, illegal detention, and links to a terrorist group. Algeria's foreign ministry reacted with anger. It said the arrest was made without following diplomatic procedures. Algeria called the arrest politically motivated and said it summoned the French ambassador to issue a strong protest. It also demanded the immediate release of the consular officer. The ministry warned that this incident could seriously harm relations with France. It said the move was no accident and accused France of trying to sabotage recent progress. That progress had come after a March 31st phone call between French President Emmanuel Macron and Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune. Both leaders had agreed to work on fixing ties. Just last week, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot visited Algeria and said he hoped for a new phase in relations.
The European Commission is raising the alarm over a sharp rise of anti-Muslim hatred across the EU. Speaking at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, the Commission's coordinator warned that racism and Islamophobia are becoming increasingly normalized in media and society, citing a 140% spike in hate crimes in Germany alone since October 7th. She also called for greater diversity in media leadership to counter harmful narratives.
I think that we have, unfortunately, a normalization of anti-Muslim narrative, and narrative that is in the media, in the social media, doesn't remain only words. Obviously, you can have views about religions, about politics, but you cannot incite to hatred against a group of individuals who are fully parts of Europe, integral components of our society. I mean, definitely those acts are very detrimental to Europe, and they don't reflect our values. We are also happy to see that member states take measures, be it in Sweden or in Denmark, in the Netherlands. So we have some prosecutions, but we are happy to see that they implement our framework decision on combating xenophobia and racism, including religious intolerance.
A critical moment in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. Yerevan says the agreement is ready, but Baku insists it would only be signed if 2 key demands are met. Azerbaijan sees the constitutional change and dissolution of the Minsk group as essential guarantees of long-term stability and recognition of its territorial integrity.
A critical juncture has been reached in efforts to finalize a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan confirmed during the Antalya Diplomacy Forum that a historic deal is ready, but implementation hinges on 2 key demands from Baku. One of Azerbaijan's conditions is the formal dissolution of the OSCE Minsk group, a body long criticized in Baku as ineffective and irrelevant since the Second Karabakh War. The second demand of Baku involves amending Armenia's constitution to remove references to territorial claims over Karabakh. Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan noted Yerevan wants to sign the peace agreement with Azerbaijan and the document to dissolve the Minsk group on the same day.
They mentioned the dissolution of Minsk group of OSCE. And our perception, our response is that we are completely ready to initiate the process of dissolution of Minsk group of OSCE. If there is no conflict, then there is no need for this Minsk group as well.
For Azerbaijan, these two steps are not symbolic. They're seen as guarantees that Yerevan will no longer challenge Azerbaijan's territorial integrity in the future on paper or in rhetoric.
Sırasında tabii ki en önemlisi Ermenistan'ın anayasasında.
There are important issues that need to be resolved. The most critical of these is the presence of claims against Azerbaijan's territorial integrity in the Armenian constitution. As long as this continues, signing of a peace agreement is not possible. Amending Armenia's constitution is an indispensable condition.
Mirzoyan, however, argues that the peace document itself includes clear recognition of Azerbaijan's borders and sees no legal need for a constitutional amendment. But Baku remains firm. Officials have stated that signing such a deal without changing Armenia's constitution would undermine its legal force. Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov said that signing a peace agreement with Armenia without a constitutional amendment is illogical. No international agreement can contradict a country's fundamental law, its constitution.
We prepared and submitted the first draft of the peace agreement. Negotiations continued for nearly 2.5 years. A month ago, the sides reached consensus on the text. Now we expect the remaining political and legal obstacles to be addressed so that the signing can happen.
Another signal of confidence from Yerevan, Mirzoyan says Armenia would no longer need the EU monitoring mission after the deal is signed, suggesting trust in long-term stability.
European monitoring mission. The mandate of the mission is, in general, to support the normalization process, to support the stability along the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And as soon as we have a peace treaty entering into force, we won't be needing this monitoring anymore.
As Armenia edges toward peace with Azerbaijan, it is simultaneously advancing talks with Turkey, a country that has long tied its normalization efforts to Baku's interests. While progress has been made, including joint discussions on trade, energy, and infrastructure, some obstacles remain, such as delayed implementation of agreements on the opening of the border for third-party nationals and those holding diplomatic passports.
An agreement to open the border for third country nationals and also citizens of Armenia and Turkey who have diplomatic passports. This agreement is not still, unfortunately, being implemented.
With all clauses of the peace deal reportedly agreed upon, the final hurdle is political will and constitutional clarity. It seems that if Yerevan meets Baku's conditions, the South Caucasus could witness its most significant breakthrough in decades.
Turkey welcomes Azerbaijan's support in Syria's restoration, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan told journalists at the closing ceremony of the 4th edition of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. According to the minister, Azerbaijan is working with Turkey on supporting security, restoring infrastructure, and the economy of Syria. Fidan emphasized that any support provided by Azerbaijan is very valuable, and they welcome the initiatives taken in this matter. The Turkish top diplomat emphasized that Baku and Ankara have established professional cooperation at the level of government agencies. Turkey has thanked Azerbaijan for its strong backing in the race to host COP31. The show of support comes as both countries strengthen their climate cooperation. Turkish Minister of Ecology, Urban Planning and Climate Change, Murat Kurum, thanked Azerbaijan after meeting with COP29 President Mukhtar Babayev at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. He said the two discussed joint efforts on climate, environment, and urban planning and praised Azerbaijan's backing of Turkey's COP31 candidacy.
Sanayi sektöründe, tarım sektöründe, ulaşım sektöründe emisyonu düşür.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has urged Turkey to remain on the course of tight monetary policies while calling for comprehensive reforms. The OECD says these steps are vital for ensuring long-term economic stability, productivity, and sustainable growth.
The OECD's newly published economic survey of Turkey highlights the country's impressive economic growth over the past decade, ranking among the fastest growing in the OECD with an average annual expansion of 4.9%. But looking ahead, the report emphasizes the need for Turkey to adopt credible and prudent macroeconomic policies. Tight monetary policy and strong fiscal discipline are seen as key tools for maintaining momentum and driving inflation down towards the official 5% target. Speaking at the report's presentation in Istanbul, OECD Secretary General Matthias Cormann stressed the importance of long-term reforms. He said that maintaining tight monetary policy and fiscal discipline will be key to ensure sustainable economic convergence with other OECD countries and a continued decline in inflation towards the 5% target. Cormann added that structural reforms aimed at improving public spending efficiency and optimizing tax revenues will be essential to reinforce fiscal discipline. The OECD also praised Turkey's recent shift towards economic policy normalization following the May 2023 elections. The government has taken a series of steps to stabilize the macroeconomic environment, moves that have boosted financial market stability, increased investor confidence, and reduced economic uncertainty. Looking ahead, the OECD forecasts a GDP growth of 3.1% in 2025 and 3.9% in 2026. The message from the OECD is clear: stay the course, deepen reforms, and Turkey can secure a path toward more stable and sustainable economic growth.
Kazakhstan is making major strides in artificial intelligence with a strong focus on attracting top talent. The country aims to bring 10,000 AI specialists each year through the launch of a new international AI center. Our correspondent Farisa Kalimurzina has more.
Kazakhstan is in talks with tech heavyweights including Telegram, InDrive and Google to establish offices at LMI, one of the country's most ambitious AI projects. The facility will feature an educational hub for school children and a startup campus with the goal of boosting AI experts to $5 billion by 2029. To achieve this objective, Kazakhstan has launched a nationwide program to train 1 million people in AI skills. Additionally, the country plans to implement AI certification for government employees while expanding AI expertise in the corporate sector. Officials say LMI is set to open in the fall of this year will serve as a catalyst for AI development in Central Asia, launching 100 AI startups and supporting one scientific research project. Through these efforts, Kazakhstan hopes to join the global partnership on artificial intelligence. AI is also making an impact beyond the tech sector, transforming industries such as agriculture, transportation, and healthcare. For example, the AgriTech Hub startup is using AI and satellite data to monitor farmland and predict crop yields. In the mining sector, Kazakhstan is utilizing AI to analyze decades-old Soviet geological records. Vice Minister of Industry and Construction Janat Dubirova notes that AI is being used to process data from the 1950s to the 1980s, recognizing up to 90% of the information even from poor quality records. So far, over 56,000 geological records have been digitized. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Farisa Kalimurzina.
Well, that's all we have for now from Baku. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.